hello. Sorry.
There we are.
Here we are.
Nice to be back in
Yes.
in real life, in lifetime here. Lifetime. Weird.
I know.
Okay.
It's been a
had a lot of
strange old
pre-recorded
time.
shows, haven't we?
Yeah. Well, I've got an assault
This
pipe
is
with
so
me
good.
today
Yeah.
because you might have noticed over the last month, I've struggled sometimes to talk. I've been doing a lot of coughing and so on and so forth. So we relied on some of our pre-recorded shows over this last week just to ensure that I wasn't coughing and spluttering and to give me a bit of time to recover. But since then, we've also had some other things going on. For instance,
oh yeah, the whole country being plunged into darkness. Here on the Iberian Peninsula.
What was that about? I mean, crikey.
Are you asking me, or was
well,
it more of a rhetorical?
More
question?
of a rhetorical question. So I think in today's show we want to talk about. There we are. Here we are. What do we want to talk about? Like the idea of
the great metaphor of light and dark, because we experienced that very personally. Monday, the 28th of April, going about our business, about to go into our next biggest town to do some chores. People refer to them as, don't they?
Yeah.
We were going to go to the bank, I think, weren't we?
We were.
Because strangely enough, we were shut out of our internet banking, and we had to get that reset. And we were going back to the bank for the third time here in Portugal to see if we could do that, having been told it wasn't possible on various occasions before that.
Yes.
But no, not the bank thwarting us this time, but the whole country being plunged into darkness. Now, we're not strangers to whole country darkness, power cuts, are we? Because
no.
you as a baby, I think, would have, well, you probably don't have it in living memory, do you?
What?
A power cut in the 70s.
Not really.
Barely alive.
I mean, yeah.
I have some recollection of that time, and that was controlled, and people knew it was going to happen. But this was a complete surprise, wasn't it?
I remember power cuts, in my childhood and stuff. And I remember we had a big hurricane and things like that.
And we get them from time to time.
And when I lived in Bali, I had a three-day power cut.
Yes.
Because I was living on the edge of a forest. And
people understood that on the basis of what some sort of emergency. It became clear why it was.
But you don't expect that in the throes of modern day life in Europe, do you?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. So there we were. Well, the first we heard of it was when our kids who were connected to the internet weren't suddenly.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, this will pass quite soon. And I went past my neighbour's house, and he confirmed that it wasn't just our house or a couple of houses. It was more than a couple of houses, because that's what happened last time we were plunged into darkness. It was just 4 houses, wasn't it, off a distribution box outside those 4 houses. It became clear it was the town, and then I got a call from a friend in the capital saying, "What's going on?" I said, "I don't know, what is going on?" And he said, "The whole of Lisbon is out. The traffic lights are out. There's chaos, mate." And I became aware that indeed, the whole of the Iberian. Well, I was aware that the whole country, Portugal, was not in darkness because it was in the middle of the day, but there was no power, which was a bit different because you definitely know it when it's at night time and the lights go out. But this was different. This felt different. And it became apparent that it was the whole country. Then we realized it was the whole peninsula. Then we were told it was parts of France as well, possibly Germany, Switzerland, maybe even Italy. And this is what happened. There was a great mystery about it. And I did a live stream. What's the first thing I do when, if in doubt, jump on a live stream? So we did a live stream to figure out. And thank you, Deb. That was very thoughtful of you, thinking of us the whole time. It really wasn't that bad, and I'm sure you'll say more about why it wasn't so bad.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to hear how Owen found it.
Owen was up in the north of this country, if you don't mind me giving your location away, Owen. And tell us how it was for you as well. I suspect you adjusted quickly. It was a beautiful day. We went to the beach down here, and ultimately we were quite disappointed, weren't we? Well, you were, especially when the lights came back on later that same evening.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I really quite was excited when I heard it was out, throughout the whole of Portugal, because, well, first of all, I realised that I needed a real break, and so I was really relieved that I didn't have to do any work. But it also occurred to me that, like,
we're self-employed.
I know, that's crazy, isn't it? It occurred to me that we could all hang out, and we weren't all going to be distracted by things. We would have a different kind of focus, and I really liked the idea of that. And we got to practice in real time how prepared we would be
Yeah.
if this kind of thing happened again. I mean, let's face it, in like there've been films released about mass blackouts and what would happen if there was an EMP and things like that.
What, as if people are being prepared for it in a way?
As if people are being prepared for it in a way. And I did think, especially when it came on like 9 hours later, I was thinking, that was a test. First of all, I was like, oh God, I really wanted a few more days of this. And we actually had some friends come round to have a like blackout drink with us. And
we saw them in the street, didn't we?
Yeah.
Passed them in their car, and they were charging their phones up. I believe out and about, having a little recce and charging the phones up off the car battery at that time. So we said, "Come over for a drink later on," and we didn't think they were coming, did we? Because it was getting dark, and we were ready to go to bed.
And it was dark as well, and we just like sat by candles.
Yes.
And so we were just getting ready to have a really, really early night, and that also felt quite good as well to have a good rest. And then all of a sudden.
No doorbell, obviously.
Yeah, they came.
That's right. They couldn't have rung the buzzer, could they?
No.
There's no electricity.
And so we were just like meeting them in the house, and it was completely pitch black apart from our little candles. And then we were just getting down to sit down at a table and chat. And all of a sudden the lights came on, and I was a bit like, It was really sweet. It felt like there was something really quite special going on, actually.
Yeah, I think we'd put ourselves in the sweet spot of it, hadn't we?
Yeah.
Now, I think we should.
If it'd been going on like 5 days, it would be very different. We would be
3 nights into the third night, and you're not thinking it's so much fun anymore. But people are suggesting if it's happened once, it may happen again. So perhaps we should talk a little bit about the preparation, and forgive us Europeans, because as Bob's saying here, in the mountains of Colorado, the hurricane-prone Florida as well, all the tornado, thunderstorm-prone Iowa, we know about power outages, and you know how to prepare for them.
I was speaking to a Canadian.
We're lightweights, we're beginners. Aren't we?
I was speaking to a Canadian friend that says, "Oh yeah, that's just normal for us. They have a heavy snowfall and then they're out." We are very, very privileged here to have such a continuous system. Yeah,
and as you said, we tested our capability, didn't we? I immediately started chopping up wood and made lunch on flames. Didn't I?
Yeah.
And I've got this special stove which charges batteries up as well. It's got a fan on it, which the fire feeds the fan, and then the fan can generate additional power, and it's got a USB coming out of it, so we could charge things up that needed charging up. Got the mini solar panel out this big that charges the phone up. That worked well. Cooked some food on offcuts of wood. Ramen, spaghetti. And I made you an omelette, didn't I?
Yes, you did. It was lovely.
So it was nice to play at it. I mean, let's be honest. We played at it, didn't we? And after a few days, I'm sure the novelty would have worn off if that had been the case. But we felt fairly well prepared, I think.
Yeah, it was nice. One thing I really learned was straight away, I think, and this is my disappointment when the electricity came on later in the evening, even though obviously right now we're working, we're having fun with you guys, and we've got full power and everything, and so that is great. However, when the electricity went out, I felt really different. I felt like something was going on. I felt very liberated all of a sudden. I felt like something was really, really changing. I can't quite describe. I can't really quite put my finger on it necessarily. But one thing I did really remember was I had this feeling that I was connected to Earth and not connected to technology. And I realized quite sharply, that I've been a creature of technology for so long now that I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to really be in my body and not to be rushing around. I mean, there were a few times when someone asked a question, I said, "Oh, let's check with Google."
as we are habituated to do.
We are completely habituated to it. I was thinking, "Ooh, which herbs should I have in this tea?" There was all sorts of different questions going on.
Is this mushroom safe to eat?
Yeah, I found 2-3 new mushrooms in my garden, in our garden, and I thought, "Ooh, that would be handy."
Yes.
But yeah, all of a sudden there was this remembrance of where I belong. Do I belong to technology or do I belong to the earth? We've been in the garden quite a bit since, and rescuing plants and things. So lots of different thoughts have come up. And there's
a whole load of angles on this, aren't there? For the sort of darkest doom mongers. It's like, I knew this was going to happen. No, it's the first of many. Bloody blah. It's a test in that sense. we can stick with the word test, can't we? And we can see it as a test of our individual capability and where we're at. You know, how much did it throw us, and how addicted, connected are we to technology?
Mm.
And the distinction you gave, I think I would see that as the world and the earth.
Yeah.
And like I've always said,
the world.
Yeah, like I've always said, you know, or I've always said, I've been reminded of the words of Barry Long. Whatever happens, the children will play and the birds will sing. And you said that to me, didn't we?
Yeah, I did.
Didn't you?
Yeah.
Like, you know, on that morning, it's like, oh, the birds are singing and the children are playing. This is the default, isn't it, of the earth? This is who we are as human beings, and we get to see how connected and addicted we are to the world when the world disappears to some extent. Now that was different for different people, wasn't it? We barely knew until the world told us, in a way, and we caught up, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean,
if you're in a city, you'd know pretty quickly.
We were very lucky. I mean, I've seen clips of people stranded in undergrounds where they all of a sudden their underground train stopped and they had to all get out and walk in the dark.
Is that right?
Yeah. They were to walk through the service tunnels or the train track back to.
Where was this?
All over. I've seen.
Really? Right. Okay.
Yeah, and obviously people getting stuck in lifts. If you've got an electric kind of underground car park, you probably wouldn't be able to get your cars. Obviously, until.
I was just thinking.
I mean,
many
so
people
many
have got an
things.
electric? You mean a communal one, don't you?
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
mean your own underground electric car park.
Yeah, like communal car parks.
Yeah.
You know, they're and all of the barriers to these car parks.
So it really was a test of how attached you are to the world, wasn't it? Or where you are in the worldly mesh and network, including the internet.
I mean, for us, it just stopped us from working all day. And then horror of horrors, we realized that if we did want to buy anything from the shop before it shut, we had no cash because all of our money is in our bank. And so there's lots of different ways you realize how in the world you are and not in, in the community.
Yeah, our friend Karen, the artist, was saying it was an interesting opportunity to see how emotionally attached we were to the internet and our devices as well, and what sort of withdrawal. Later on that same day, when the power came on, you confiscated my phone.
I did, yeah, because he was straight back on it.
You were sick of my attachment to my device. But very interesting, this earth and world distinction, I think, and to see where we were in the scheme of things. With that, and obviously, the more dependent you are on the city atmosphere situation, the more difficult it would have been, presumably. Well,
I mean, also traffic lights, hospitals, like fire stations. I mean, we were really fortunate because our water supply was still on.
Yes. Not so much for others who are using electrical pumps in their towns. Yeah.
So, I mean, it really brought it clear to mind, how are we living and what are we hoping for? And actually, when it happened, the first bits of news we had were that it was probably going to be a really long-term power cut. It would be probably for a few days, if not a week. Also, a bit like giving birth, when you go into labor, that it's inevitable now. And this labor is going to happen. All of the waiting has stopped. There was almost a feeling of relief because, at the back of my mind, I've always had this little, what would happen if, and if this happens, it's like I've already had this kind of worry that something might happen, and would we have enough? And actually in that moment, there was a sense of relief as well, because now that moment was here. It wasn't, but it felt like it. And I would just have to do the best with what we had. Which was kind of exciting.
I find that fascinating. Yeah, because I think there are levels of resilience that we've kind of talked about.
Yeah.
There is material resilience, isn't there? How prepared you are with the things you need, in a survival sense, in the physical world.
Yeah.
And then there's the mental / spiritual resilience, isn't there?
Yeah.
To see how you. And it's the same, I'm guessing, with childbirth. I only have a second-hand understanding of that as a witness. But in a situation where something's really happening, you have your ideas tested in reality, don't you?
Yeah.
So the hypnobirthing and what you learned in classes and everything you thought you would do. I mean, generally speaking, for people, that's when they get to test. So it's where ideology and intellect and rationality meets reality.
Mhm.
And that's where I think we find out who we truly are, when those two things meet. And I think that's what happened on Monday.
Yeah.
We had a chance to do that. And I don't think humanity is ever without some sort of challenge. It's in the nature of being alive, isn't it? And we have particular challenges. We live, of our time, whatever time we've been in. And I'm not a big sort of past life understander or subscriber. I've got nothing against it, but I don't have that reference myself of remembering other times when I was up against my ideology versus my reality. But I really got a good sense of it in this time. And I think that's, if you like, if we're talking about this as a test, you can go along that sort of conspiracy theory, very dark and basic survivalist line of it was a test of that and what might happen. But it is a test of us individually to see what we will do under pressure and whether we go to pieces mentally and where we are in terms of what you might call our spiritual preparation and what we remember to do or what we're called to do. Because remembering and putting things into practice are very different. And we can only ever have our human experience as the moment to do that, right?
Absolutely.
And there was some of that going on Monday, I think.
Yeah. And I've seen lots of clips of videos where people are just all sat out in town and all partying together, and where barbecues just like happened and people were sort of congregating and just having a nice time.
Wasn't it?
A very Portuguese way.
Yeah.
And of shop owners, that they can't refrigerate their ice creams or their beers, and so they were either selling them off cheap or giving them away. There was this sense of real deep collaboration. I really liked it. We did notice the next day when we went to a cafe that we had stale salad. So I think some people obviously made a loss and were trying to pass off.
That was a test of their resilience, wasn't it?
Yes,
And they were testing our digestive resilience.
Yes, definitely. But on the whole, I think this was a really good wake up call for us.
Can I add to that an idea I've probably been boring you with here at home, the Kyle Cease idea that May is about giving up hope, and that sounds really dismal, doesn't it? But if you bear with me, and I've heard this before, hope is something you have when you don't have any agency. So that's all that's left is if you don't feel like in control of things, then you have to turn to hope.
Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with that, but we might be addicted and overly attached to hope. And I think that was brought to our attention on Monday as well, is the future we take for granted. And in this case, the future of electricity, and assuming that the electricity will be there just as we assume the sun will be there in the morning. It wasn't there. Something that we've culturally relied on for a long time failed on a scale and in a way we're not used to. And that, I think, is quite a big shock and is a reflection of this same idea of hope, is if we're not dealing with the now, we can live in the past and the future. And arguably our whole culture is based on that. It's based on fearing and reliving the past and having that create the future in a situation in which we don't even have to be in the present anymore. And something like that happening, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying that when it does happen, you are brought into the moment. You are brought into the moment in a way you might not want. And in a way that, even though intellectually and ideologically, this show is called The Moment, and there's an appreciation, I think, for being in the moment. However, when you're brought into the moment against your will, that's a very different matter to purposefully meditating or stopping for 5 minutes, isn't it?
Yeah. And
you get to see who you are and what you're up to, I think, in that situation, if you are living too much in hope and perhaps not enough in reality. And there's a whole other part to this. I would really recommend Kyle Cease's latest video, because he talks about what's hurting needs to be heard. And again, you could say that on Monday, what's hurting about our society, what we're not listening to, we come face to face with in a dramatic event. And it's the same on a personal level. We can keep ignoring what's hurting us and ignoring our healing and basically our past, and not attend to it and say, okay, well, I'm just going to be hopeful about that. I'm not going to deal with it. I'm going to be hopeful about it. And that doesn't necessarily address, it doesn't address the healing. It does what our culture tells us to do, which is book a holiday or scroll or drink or do all these things. Again, there's nothing wrong with any of them. But it's useful to note how we are using any of them. And you notice me, I scroll, I know, as an escape. And that, that's my
escape what from me.
Yeah, generally speaking, when you can hear me in another room, or when you can't hear me in another room. Scrolling, drinking, any activity that gives you a distraction from what's trying to be heard happens on an individual basis, and I think it's happening on a massive cultural basis, and that is what we're coming face to face with at the moment.
Fascinating. I love that. So many lovely things have been brought up in my mind, and one of the things that I noticed on Monday night, and really thanks for saying that, because you've jogged my memory to what Sarah was saying. She was saying that like you really learn who you are, and you guys noticed that I was really released and felt very free by the stopping of electricity, and that why would I not just choose to make that decision? So only choose to rest, only choosing to rest because of an emergency, or only choosing to rest. It's like waiting for life to do things for you to feel free enough. It's like, how did she put it? Can you remember?
I can't remember, but yeah, I mean, we all giggled, didn't we? When you were given, it's like not wanting to go to school and it snows. You didn't take a sovereign decision as a truant, and I don't want to go to school, so I'm not going. Yeah, I'll just pray that it snows. Yeah, and then once a year it might. Yeah, and it's like
and you might get that day off.
I've got the day off, and it was a bit like that for you, wasn't it? You had a windfall, godsend reason, rather than your own reason to not work. Yeah.
Yes, like not knowing us. And again, I think that can really happen when we follow a life based on the routine that we get from electricity, because obviously, like, electricity is giving us a routine, isn't it? Because we're going to work in our very sort of electronic lives and so on and so forth, and we forget about the magic. Like Wayne,
it's buying from the future, isn't it? We're borrowing from the future.
And what Wayne has said here is the same as what happened to you as well. Yeah. Went outside, the street lights were out, and we were surrounded with fireflies. Yeah. Magical moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't, I think maybe the fireflies on that evening responded to the fact that there was so little ambient light from humanity. That it was alive. The sky was alive with fireflies where I was just before the lights came back on and ruined it. Yeah.
And Debs is saying, I think about that too. I believe we could work it out by knowing how to make a fire and growing our own food. Yet there's so many years of relying upon electricity that we would struggle. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a way that our grandparents just wouldn't have batted an eyelid because they know exactly what to do. We have got quite spoilt with it. And trust me, we've been doing gardening stuff ever since.
It's confession time now. Yeah. Bob says, I will admit, when I got back to Pontyleen, I topped off the fuel in the car. Yeah. So it has brought people up quick and short, hasn't it, with where they were left sort of maybe a little bit complacent. We've discovered loads of food that's gone off in our food store, haven't we? Because we haven't been circulating it.
Yeah, because we thought, I think at the time of the pandemic, be good to get a survival.
Did some of those things go back to 2020?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
And every now and again, we've topped up things when we thought that maybe things were about to change, like the banking system collapses or something like that. Yeah. It's been interesting because we haven't just been reviewing our supplies, but we've also been reviewing our seeds that we had for our garden. But even beyond that, it's like we've been going through a purging. Lots of things have been coming up. It's like we're really almost preparing ourselves for a leaner life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I long for that anyway.
Like taking out the complications.
That's hastened it a little bit, hasn't it? All this stuff. I mean, I put it to you yesterday, didn't I? That all this stuff we were surrounded by a lot of it is based on fear, isn't it? And not joy. It's not like a joyful provisioning for an unlikely outcome. Because I think that could be a very good way of looking at prepping, if you like. And I know that has a negative connotation, but if you joyfully prepare for the unlikely, I mean, that sounds like great fun. Yeah. But if you're scared to death and you start provisioning yourself against the apocalypse, I mean, that is almost like well, what we think about, we bring about. So,
Yeah.
so why not have a positive prepping rather than a negative one, which in a way is contributing to its inevitable arrival? If we're that powerful,
Yeah, exactly.
which I think we are.
I think we are, definitely.
Yeah, sounds wonderful.
A leaner life. Yeah. I think that's the thing that really occurred to me, was the idea of simplicity, the idea that things would be simple. It would be about getting up, growing, looking after each other, cooking and eating together, and everything else would wait. Obviously, in our lives right now, I don't think it is as simple as that. But I got a sense of a start of it. I'm quite excited about that.
So we can lean into the lean.
Yeah, lean into the lean, see where it takes us.
Yeah, and do it joyfully and proactively and positively. I'm very uncomfortable with this being put to me as a very negative thing. Not that I deny it really, but I'm just not sure it's the best way to go about how we're visioning a collective future together. Again, Deb agrees, we are that powerful, and I think what we think about, we bring about. So we better be really careful about how we think about it. And there's no reason why we shouldn't transition into a saner way of living. But with our best capabilities, we could do that in a very positive way, I think.
Absolutely. Now, this might seem like a bit of a kind of waffly, like we were just coming back into the show after being off air for a little bit. And putting in some pre-recorded shows. Since that time, we've also been doing a little bit of reviewing as well. This is our 84th show, and we've got another one tomorrow. And we've come to a bit of a decision, haven't we?
We have. Yes, I'll have coffee, please.
No, we're gonna have we're gonna have a short break. So we're going to do another live tomorrow, and we're actually going to sum up some of our favorite bits of what we've been chatting about over these last
if you could
85 shows
those too, that would be awesome.
Some of our great guests, and have a little bit of
please let us know who you've enjoyed, and are you going to go to the trouble of making any clips?
I can do, yeah.
More work. That's why you want the internet to go down sometimes, isn't it? Because it creates so much work for you.
So we're going to have a little bit of a break. I need to keep recovering because my voice is still a little bit, I'm very chesty, put it that way at the moment. I need to have a proper break, but we want to review whether we're still going to be doing a daily live stream, or maybe doing something more powerful once a week or something like that. So we're going to take a little bit of time and hopefully come back June time, would you say?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Debbie K, hi. I'm not sure if we acknowledged you. Good to see you here as well.
You're Deb's friend, aren't you, Debbie K?
Deb,
so it's Deb and Deb.
Yeah, the two Debs are here. Okay. I think we're drawing to a close on this particular episode, the penultimate one for the time being. So let us know. Join us tomorrow. Have a bit of a party tomorrow, can't we? And let us know some of the high points for you, if you will. Some of our favorite guests, and there have been many, haven't they? If we stop to think about it.
I mean, Tom and Tasha have been on loads of times. We've had Sarah on a couple of times. Good old Sarah Taylor. We've had John Flaherty on. We've had loads of people. Jill Matson. We've also had Amy from The Eyes Have It. We've just had loads of great people. So there's lots and lots of going on.
Pete's psychic. I think Pete is using his intuitive healer abilities here, and he's looked into our souls, and he's telling us, and we'll agree with this, you guys need some more time to yourself. Cheers, Pete. Thank you for that. And those contacts, Pete, if you've got them for the solar installations, that'd be awesome too. Somebody was asking me if I could ask you.
Oh, wow.
And you love the recordings, Deb. That's great. I will miss this too. I wake up to the Munsons.
Oh, bless you. Well, they're still you can watch them on New Reality TV.
Yeah, for sure.
.com. You can also go to my YouTube channel because we were trialing them across both channels. When we come back, I think we will be just on New Reality TV. But anyway,
all right, all the best.
Thanks for joining us today.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.